This is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. Today I have a very special treat for you. We have Karen Ramsey here of SuperHealthyChildren.com, and she wrote the book, Creating Healthy Children Through Attachment Parenting and Raw Foods. And one day when I have kids, I'm probably definitely going to read this book, but I don't have kids yet, so I'm probably not going to read the book yet. But anyways, what we have Karen today on the show for is to actually just share with you the 3 top ways to get kids to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, because I know many of you guys out there may have a challenge with that, especially if you didn't start your kids young. So Karen, what would you say the 3 best ways to get kids to eat more fruits and vegetables are?
Okay. Well, I have loads of tips. In fact, chapter 17 of my book on transitioning children to raw foods has like 21 plus tips on making it a really fun raw food lifestyle. I'll give you a few of my favorite tips. First of all, getting your child out into nature is the most important. And I know, John, you talk a lot about gardening. Well, things like gardening, getting your children, getting their feet out in the soil, planting and harvesting. Sometimes a meal for my kids would be out in the garden. Like we'd be harvesting food and they'd be eating. And that was fine with me. We also volunteered for our local organic farmer. So that's another great way to get your kids doing things outdoors with plants. And we also, when we went hiking, we talked about how the animals lived. So that was another outdoor activity where we were out in nature, and I would point out to my children, you see, there's no other animal here that nurses from another species. Only humans. And so they understood why human milk is so important. And my daughter now, who's 24, if she has a child at some point, she's planning to also nurse her child and follow her child's needs for mother's milk, not for formula. That's not natural. So that getting outdoors tip is probably number 1. Number 2 would be getting your kids very active with you in food preparation. And we had a raw food restaurant that we created in our home already when we transitioned to raw foods when my kids were 3 and 5. And I had them up at the counter with me preparing everything. We created our own menus with recipes that only had a few ingredients so that they could take off on it themselves and make their own menus. And they used to take an ironing board and put it across one of the door openings, and I bought them mini equipment. And they would take the mini equipment and they would make us smoothies and pâtés and wraps, all different kinds of wraps with different holders like romaine lettuce or cabbage or collard greens, and put in pâté with lots of vegetables and roll that up, or a nut butter and vegetables, or some strips of avocado and vegetables. So it was just something that was easy for them, and they learned to love to do that, and my husband and I were their customers. So we created a whole restaurant situation.
Wow, that's
we
cool.
Also paid them.
That's one way to get them involved. Pay off your kids.
So that was like more fun for them because, as you know, kids love making money. It was practical. We started out with play money, and we ended up paying them real money over the years, and it was very worthwhile. So those are 2 things. And a third tip that I'm going to give you is that when you go to the store with your children, ask them, when you go to the produce department or when you go to your local organic market, your farmer's market, ask your kids to get you a fruit and vegetable for every color of the rainbow.
Wow.
Because that will bring in all the different nutrients that you get from all the different colors of food. So those are 3 really important tips that I can give. There's many more.
Wow, those are some excellent tips, Karen. I'm sure there's many more in your book. Speaking of your book, actually, I want to talk about this last section, attachment parenting. So you want to share with my viewers a little bit about the attachment parenting and why you believe it's so important?
Definitely. Well, half of my book is about raw food, but clearly the other half of the book is about the other healthy lifestyle factors that are so important in bringing up children. And initially, it was recommended to me that I only focus on foods. And as I was doing that, over a year's time, I realized that I could not leave out these other aspects of raising healthy children. And one of the most important is attachment parenting. And what that means is following the emotional, mental, and spiritual needs of the child, not following the parents' needs. When the child comes into the world, the child doesn't know what all of this is. And to let the child scream it out in a crib at the end of the hallway at night is detaching your child. Even if that child does end up settling down and going to sleep, it does not mean that it is good for the child's emotional well-being. And so what we need to do is we need to think consciously, and we need to prioritize what is best for the child. Sleeping with the child, holding the child, and especially after the baby is born, holding the child against the mother's skin for those first hours, days, and even weeks after birth. The mother holding the baby against the skin as much as possible, and that's called skin-to-skin contact. It makes a lot of sense. Baby feels right in the world when held against the mother's skin, and initially it should be the mother. The baby will eventually reach for the father as well. But it makes sense also because when holding the baby against the skin, the stress hormone cortisol is reduced, and the love hormone oxytocin is increased. And that's what we want for our children. We want oxytocin. So these are just some of the important aspects of attachment parenting. And of course, breastfeeding. We know that if we're going to follow nature in raising our children, that we must give our children the most natural milk that we have. And breastfeeding is the only way to go, unless a mother absolutely cannot nurse, and it's very rare. Very rare. There's so many ways to get a mother to increase her breast milk supply, and to solve any kind of a problem that she might have with breastfeeding.
So thank you, Karen. I'm sure my viewers learned a lot about, attachment parenting and the 3 best ways to include more fruits and vegetables into their diet. If somebody wants to learn more about you, what are your websites and how will they contact you?
Okay, well, my website is superhealthychildren.com, and on the website you'll see all of my events, and the table of contents for my book has all the chapters. There's 35 chapters, and it's very specific, very easy to get to. I have a full index, so it's really, even though it's a large book, it's so easy to navigate. I also have a YouTube channel called Super Healthy Children, and I have a lot of new YouTubes up. I have some interviews with 14-year-old raw vegans and many other interviews, including recipe YouTube, with one that you'll really like about making a delicious 5 to 10 minute raw vegan blueberry pie.
Wow, that sounds delicious. I think I want to go and make a raw blueberry pie right now. Actually kind of hungry. Well, thank you, Karen, for all this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, learning more about how to create healthy children. My name is John Kohler with OKRod.com. We'll see you next time. And remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're the best.